Good evening. This is the June 22nd, 2017 meeting of the Monroe Planning and Zoning Commission. We're in Town Council chambers. It is now 7:04 p.m. Will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Will the Commission please introduce themselves, starting on my right?
Bruno Maini, alternate. Jonathan Formicello, alternate.
Kathy Lundstrom, alternate.
Leanne Ambrosi, Commissioner.
David Townsend, Vice Chairman.
William Porter, Chairman.
Paul Lisi, Commissioner.
Will Agresta, Planner.
Scott Schatzline, Land Use Group Director and Town Engineer.
Rebecca Wood, Recording Secretary.
And Michael O'Reilly texted me that he was held up at work and probably would not be here. General public participation. Is there anyone who would like to address the commission on any topic that's not related to a public hearing? Seeing none. General appointments, we have none. All right, we'll move into public hearings. Public hearing for Web Circle has been postponed to July 6th. And you all received a letter a short while ago that the hearing for 16 Timothy Hill Road is being postponed until July 6th. So we have one. I'll read the public notice. Planning and Zoning Commission, Monroe, Connecticut. Notice of public hearing to be held June 22nd, 2017. In accordance with Connecticut General Statutes 8-7D, a public hearing will be held in the Town Hall Council Chamber, 7 Fan Hill Road, Monroe, Connecticut, on Thursday, June 22nd, 2017 at 7 p.m. or soon thereafter concerning the following. SCP 2017-06, file number 1589A, 285 Cutler's Farm Road, Wolf Park, Monroe Tax Assessor Map 28, Lot 09. Application of the Town of Monroe Parks and Recreation for construction of 2 multi-purpose ball fields, access trail, improvement of overflow parking area with lighting and landscaping, and screening of maintenance area. Will, what do we have for exhibits?
Exhibit 1, special exception permit application. Exhibit 2, engineering report. Exhibit 3, narrative and supplemental information. Exhibit 4, proposed lighting photometric plan. Exhibit 5, data compilation survey. Exhibit 6, 7-page plan set. Exhibit 9, 9-page plan set. Exhibit 8, approval resolution in the Wetlands Commission. Exhibit 9, fire marshal comments. Exhibit 10, accessible parking sketch. Exhibit 11, planner comments. Exhibit 12, abutters list, certified notice sheets, green cards. Exhibit 13, building official comments. Exhibit 14, plan set. Exhibit 15, additional special parking sketch. Exhibit 16, narrative and supplemental information. Exhibit 17, page plan set. Exhibit 18, copy of Wolf Park overflow parking lot presentation, and that is all.
Okay, for the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Frank Cooper. I'm the Director of Parks and Recreation on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Commission. Excuse me, I've been sick for a while, but I'll get through this, I think. Tonight, who we have on hand this evening is Dave Sacco. He's the project engineer for the TPA group, and he's going to be presenting the overall plan for the field project and a few other related items. Also on hand for tonight, doing a presentation will be our head of our land use group and chief engineer, Mr. Scott Schatzline, again talking about the overflow parking lot and the maintenance design area. You might recall that that several months ago, we had to withdraw our application after some concerns were raised by the members of this body, primarily around the parking issue and the fact that the overflow lot was never an approved facility, and to create the adequate number of parking spaces that were needed for the new fields and the related sports that would be going on there. As a way of refreshing your memories, and for those that were here before, maybe some of you that were not here at that time, we were discussing, why we need these fields. The primary reason why we need them is because the number of sports that are currently going on at the lake fields is something that was not real or realized or thought about when it was designed. It was designed primarily for softball / baseball and a few soccer games. Since that time, as I'm sure you all know, lacrosse has become a very, very significant player here in Monroe. And particularly during the spring months, the fields at Great Hollow are home to lacrosse, soccer, and softball all at the same time. It looks like a bad road map when you see all the lines are all different colors and what have you down there. On top of that, and I think probably the most important thing, is the fact that the quality of the turf, the natural turf that we have there, is beginning to suffer. To the quote-unquote untrained eye, you may not think so. But every year, right this time of the year, after the spring sports are over, the maintenance staff really breaks their neck to try to get it in shape for the upcoming fall season. And of course, trying to grow grass at the hottest time of the year is not the smartest thing to do. But given the fact that we don't have any other choice in the matter, that is what we have to do. And every year, it becomes more and more difficult to have the fields bounce back and become what we all have realized that Wolf Park is. We've got good turf there, but it's a challenge. It really is a challenge. The areas that get burned out primarily are those areas that are in front of the goals, the goal mouths, in front of the soccer goals, in front of the lacrosse goals, and we don't have the ability to really, or the money to start putting down sod and that kind of stuff. So we try to grow it with seed. The thing that saves us is the fact that we do a very aggressive overseeding and top dressing program and aeration, and that allows us to keep what it is that we have. But quite frankly, in some of the key areas, we are losing the battle. And I'd be more than happy to take you all, any one of you down there and show you exactly what I'm talking about. So I think it becomes imperative upon us to establish these new fields so that we can keep the quality of the playing fields that we currently have at Wolf Park, and to allow us to do some rotational scheduling to take some of the wear and tear off of the heavily used areas. So with that, I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Sacco, and he can talk to you about the plan as it is, for the multi-purpose fields. And then hopefully after that, we can address the parking lot issues and answer any questions that you may have at that time. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Sacco. I'm a civil engineer with TPA Design Group in New Haven. We've been working for the Park and Recreation Department for some time. We were actually the original designers for Wolf Park back in the 70s, so we've had a lot. I'm just going to quickly introduce the overall plan and walk you through it. This is an existing conditions plan of the portion of the park off of Cutler's Farm Road. You can see this is the entrance, the main parking lot, the existing swimming pool building. The tennis courts are right here. The play sculpture is right here. The areas that we're going to be discussing are an existing open field adjacent to the tennis courts and a larger open field across the wetlands through the woods from the playscape and across from the other field. We've been referring to this one as the west field and this as the practice field. Those are the two areas that we're looking at addressing. This is, right now it's an open lawn. This is periodically mowed for haying by a farmer. Just to, in terms of logistics for developing the facilities, what we're proposing to do is get access to the proposed practice field from the parking lot along an existing asphalt walkway, across the lawn next to the tennis courts and into this practice field area. The access for the proposed west field will be along an existing bituminous path across the lawn, through the woods and into the west field area. This was a subject that was extensively discussed both with the commission earlier on during development of the final plan and also with the Inland Wetland Commission, and agreed to by both bodies back, the Inland Wetland Commission approved it very recently. It was also previously discussed about a year and a half ago with this organization. This is a plan and grading plan for the fields. The underlying idea behind the fields is that we're trying to take advantage of what are already open areas, regrade them to the extent necessary to create playable surfaces. Essentially, right now, they're just too steep to play sports on. We need to regrade them, cutting on one side, filling on the other side, in order to have a minor slope that will allow proper drainage, but not so much slope that it's impractical. What we're looking at is roughly a 2% cross slope on a field, something that's pretty typical for ball fields. The practice field adjacent to the tennis courts is going to be crowned and will drain to both sides. There's going to be swales to direct the runoff from the tennis court around the field and from the field around into the adjacent wetlands. The main west field is going to be cut on the uphill side, filled on the downhill side. It's going to have a continuous slope from southeast to northwest. You'll notice these rectangles. These are different standard sport fields. And you'll see that the field is actually larger than any of them. The intent is to get as large a practical space as could be achieved in the area so that there would be some flexibility for Parks and Rec in the future to shift the fields around, to move the layouts around so that the goals are in different locations, the wear spots are going to be in different locations, to make it as feasible as possible for them to manage this for long-term usage. There's going to be a new permanent pathway established from adjacent to the playscape out to the field. It's going to be bituminous paved. There are going to be a couple of culverts and bridging. We're going to essentially bridge these two wetland crossings with crushed stone that will allow natural flow of water. There are going to be pipe culverts in both crossings to accommodate high flow up to a 50-year storm to minimize the potential for overtopping and damaging the roadway. There's going to be a small bituminous concrete pad here at the edge of the field, which will serve two purposes. First of all, they can place porta potties on it so that they're available to players and spectators at the field. Also so that there's an area for people in wheelchairs, people with accessibility challenges to sit comfortably without having to try to move around on the lawn area. In the case of the west field, we're proposing to put in a drainage trench along the uphill side. We do know based on test pits that there is high groundwater in the area. In order to minimize saturation of the playing field by water seeping out of the hillside, there's going to be a trench. It will have a perforated pipe in it. It will be backfilled with crushed stone so that any seep water is collected before it can break out onto the surface. It will be direct piped around and discharged downhill on either side. There will be riprap splash pads to prevent any erosion at the outlets. There will be a rail fence here at the edge, the top of the slope. It's going to be a three-rail fence. It'll have chain link fabric on it so that it will stop balls and things from going down the hill. It also just serves as a visual marker to sort of the limit of the play field where it's going to get steeper. We had looked at originally placing this at the bottom of the hill. The Inland Wetland Commission recommended that it be placed at the top of the slope so that it reduced the need for players to potentially go down the hill to collect a ball, because this slope, if I just go on here, this is the planting plan. The slope, rather than having a lawn that requires extensive maintenance and mowing, will be a kind of meadow mix that's intended to be mowed a couple of times a year, but not regularly, a mix of natural grasses and wildflowers that are native, so that it's drought tolerant and it's low maintenance. But it is consequently a potential tick habitat, so the fence serves to help keep balls and therefore athletes from having to go down the hill. Additional planting that's proposed, there's going to be screening along the top of the slope here to minimize the risk of balls and equipment going down the slope and into the playscape. There's also going to be some screening plants along the toe slope here between the field and the wetlands. There is an existing stone wall here and here, as well as here. Those are going to be, the stones are going to be collected and they're going to be reused to construct a wall along the limit of the field. So at the edge of the woods, there will be first the reconstructed stone wall, and then a row of screening plants, and then the field with a planted lawn. This is a detail of the three-rail fence with the chain link mesh. It's going to have a few openings screened by an offset layer of fencing so that if necessary, somebody can get through at 3 locations to go down the slope, but hopefully with the offset access, there's minimal risk that anything can get through and go down. This is a section through the rebuilt stone wall. Right now it's pretty tumbled down. It's very old, so that it's somewhat distressed and somewhat dispersed. The idea is to reconstruct it into a more orderly and traditional looking dry stone wall. Something fairly typical. These are just some construction details that I'd just like to point out. Detail of the infiltration trench on the west field, typical section for the walking path. The walking path will have, this is the crossing at the wetland with the overflow pipes and a crushed stone bed that would allow for transmission of minor flow of water. We're already going to be disturbance through the wetlands. In order to get this path built, they're going to install 2 empty conduits beneath the roadway to accommodate any future improvements that are desired specifically, and if there's any interest in eventually sprinklering the field, providing irrigation for the field, or providing electricity to the field. There's a way to provide those services to the field without having to do any further disruption within the woods. In terms of the construction logistics, the idea is that the contractor will move in, perform the work, and then build the finished pathway on the way out. There's going to be a need to do some work, probably some minor limb clearing, a little bit of grading in order to accommodate traffic in and out. But again, what we've tried to do is establish the grading so that the cut on the uphill side of each field is balanced with the amount of fill to be placed on the downhill side, so that there is a very limited need to import material. The topsoil that's there will be scraped up and stockpiled for reuse after the field is graded and ready to go. So mainly what's going to be imported for the west field is going to be pipe for the drainage, the sub-drainage, stone and fabric for the infiltration trench. Just the specialized materials required around the drainage work, as well as the materials for actually constructing the path. And the idea is that the path will be, the base of the path will be established to facilitate construction. The paving will be the last thing done. The contractor will more or less pave his way back out so that the construction work doesn't result in damage to the path and having to, repair it essentially as he leaves. Similarly with the practice field, it's really designed for balance. Minimize the amount of material that has to come in or go out, limited to material that's specialized and related to providing proper drainage on the site, providing a proper section for the field. I don't know if you want me to touch on this now or you'll come
Why
back
don't
to
we
it
wait till,
later.
get back to
Okay.
it later.
That's really the high points. If anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Would you want to keep the field separate from the parking?
We could, why don't we do everything, and then, because one might affect the other a little bit, so I could go through it and then there'll be questions. Okay, for the record, my name is Scott Schatzwein, and I'm the town engineer. And I've been asked to take a look at the overflow parking lot, which is being necessitated by the increase in the park with the ball fields and potential parking. So the engineering department has gone through and done some design work and come up with a plan for the parking lot. As I said, we're one of a team with TPA and the Parks Department, so we put together a set of drawings that you received in your packet. For those who don't know, I'm sure everyone knows where the park is, but the overflow lot is located in the northeast corner of the park. It's about 500 feet north of Heather Road, and it's in the area just north of the maintenance facility for the park. Oops, sorry. Existing conditions. Right now, there's we call it the overflow parking lot. It's a gravel lot. The lot has pretty much evolved over the years. There is no record of a specific approval for it. Also in the park, in the existing parking lot area is a storage yard that's used for storing equipment and materials used throughout the park. And that's in the easterly portion of the lot along here. Also inside the parking lot is a few poles. I think they're centrally located. They're tall utility poles. And on the poles are some lights which also kind of just happened and are there and evolved over the years. So those are in that area as well. Right now there is a combined entrance into this area just north of the maintenance building here. Both the staff, employees, and the public uses this entrance to come into this overflow lot and park usually when there isn't other available parking in the main parking lot. And we've noticed that there are a number of people that seem to prefer to park in this overflow lot. The existing driveway has poor sightline. There's really not good sightline for exiting that location, so we're hoping to improve on that, and I'll explain that in a few minutes. In this parking lot, there's really no internal landscaping, the type that you're used to seeing with through your regulations. There's very little planting around the parking lot. There is some buffer plantings, fairly decent buffer plantings along the frontage of the area, so luckily that's there. There is no stormwater quality control. Basically what happens is, it's a gravel lot. When it rains, it just sheet flows off the gravel into this area here, which sheet flows directly into the wetland area. This blue area here is the wetlands. There's a little bit of distance of fairly open woods. There's not a lot of understory, so there's an area where that just sheet flows. Historically, they've used this north end of the parking lot and coming around to the west end as just storage for materials, wood chips, gravel, recycled material, that type of use. For proposed conditions, we've put together a site plan to come up with the required number of parking spaces. We are proposing to use a gravel surface. Your regulations, section 6.1.13E, subsection 3, does allow that. It is allowed for alternative surface treatments in seasonally used parking areas such as parks and in public trail, etc. Then it lays out 4 items which should be addressed if that were to take place. And I've taken a look at that, and we'll talk about that. But the proposal does include a gravel surface for the parking area, and the intent is that the parking lot is going to be used seasonally. It won't be used during the winter, so there won't be plowing operations. And it's felt that its use will be infrequent enough to maintain the gravel surface. A number of measures that will address that, and I'll get to that in a minute. Going back to this plan showing the area, we have proposed a new entrance and exit along the north end of the parking lot, which has sufficient sight line. And this drawing doesn't quite show the full sight line, but in the packet you got, it shows the full length of the sight line. It complies with the state traffic manual, so we were able to make that improvement, which will be quite an improvement to the existing situation. In addition, by doing that, we're going to separate the 2 access points. This existing access will be utilized by staff only for access into a new outside storage area that is being provided as part of the plan. And I'll give you a little bit more detail in a minute on that. Added into the parking lot is a number of measures that will address the fact that it's a gravel parking lot. And the first is the addition of a paved entrance area, which is this dark shaded area. This will be paved so that any tracking of material will be kept in the parking lot area, won't be pulled out into the road. It'll provide safety measures so that when people are pulling in, they have the benefit of a hard surface for turning and access when they're trying to find their way. In addition, the drainage has been designed specifically with the thought in mind that it will be a gravel lot. What's going to happen is the water will shed across the gravel surfaces, which are shown here in light gray, and they'll enter large internal landscaped islands, which are items that you specifically require in your regulations. And those are 15 feet wide, and they have a very broad swale inside the island so that the water will be collected in the island and will run down to the end of the island, to the larger end islands, landscaped islands, where there will be each one has a rain garden of sorts, not so much planted as a rain garden, but graded as a rain garden. The water will collect in those rain gardens, and then excess water will sheet flow off of the island or out of the island across a 2-foot wide crushed stone pad that's going to be placed along both the northerly side of both islands. It'll then sheet flow across this paved surface where it's controlled by the hard surface, and it will flow it'll hit the curbing. We're going to provide bituminous curbing along this north side of the driveway only. The rest of it won't be curbed. It'll hit that curbing, run along the curbing, and then run through another crushed stone pad and into a stormwater quality basin where it'll be treated for stormwater quality. It will then flow out a spillway, whatever reaches a spillway, and flow into a swale which runs down this. Historically, there's been a ditch along here. We're going to form it into a little bit better swale, and then that'll run into the wetland area. The stormwater quality basin is designed to be a dry basin, and what I've done is we've put in a perforated drainage pipe in the middle of the basin so that after it rains, the water will slowly drain through the crushed stone, through the perforated pipe. On the outlet end of the perforated pipe, we're putting in a gate valve, which we will close. And then as it rains, we're going to monitor it and open that gate valve only if needed, so that if the water isn't fully running out on its own of the basin, then we'll tweak or open up that gate valve to let more water out at a quicker rate. So that's an interesting little feature that we've added to assure that we can kind of monitor and set the conditions in that basin so that they are providing full water quality. In addition, the remaining sheet flow across this lower section, which doesn't have the benefit of running through these two islands, will run into a broad swale that is along this side of the parking lot. That'll be landscaped as well. That'll go through a crushed stone area and into the stormwater quality basin as well. In addition, we're going to take this really uncontrolled storage of equipment and material, and we're going to place it in a defined storage yard northwest of the equipment maintenance building. And what we're going to do here is utilize some of the fill material that's coming from the grading that we're going to do in the parking lot. Incidentally, I didn't mention that initially, before we do that grading, we're going to take off any millings that are out there. So we're going to remove those from the area, and this gravel will be clean, new gravel that's put in there. This storage yard, we're going to build a modular block wall that goes around 3 sides of it. The front retaining wall, which will only be about 2 feet high, we're going to build out of gravity blocks, that ugly big square gravity block. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the stone wall that's getting removed for the entrance drive, entrance and exit, and we're gonna build or reconstruct that stone wall in front of the gravity block wall. So it'll function as a retaining wall, but we can use the stones and it'll look like a farm wall and match the rest of the frontage. So in your POCD and your regulations also refers, or I think there's a town code as well that refers to trying to maintain and salvage stone walls, and that's how we want to do it. We want to bring it over here and continue that run of stone wall, which ends up in this area. What we're going to do is put in a double catch basin. It's going to be a deep catch basin because we've got the fill in this storage yard. That will have a double sump in the bottom of it, and then we're going to pipe it out through this pipe here out to the stormwater quality basin. So you'll get the benefit of the sump collecting any sediment that comes off, and you get the benefit of this rather large stormwater quality basin to address any stormwater quality issues from that. In addition, we're going to put in a landscaped buffer we're going to add to the buffer with these trees along the frontage of the property and put buffer plantings or aesthetic plantings along the wall to kind of tone that down as well. So there'll be a little bit of wall showing. On top of the wall, there'll be a stockade fence. I'll provide a little bit more information about that. Within the parking lot, when I'm finished, David will provide a little bit more information about lighting that will be put into the parking lot. There'll be new poles, and the poles are shown on there. There's a full, I forget how many poles we're actually putting in, but there are shorter poles. They're not the tall. They comply with your regulations. Those will be routed and brought through conduit into the building where the circuit box and breaker will be in there. Another feature is that we are proposing this paved walkway, wide walkway here that will come up to a gate inside so that we can eliminate the need to load vehicles up and bring equipment around to get into the park. Mowers and equipment that's going to be utilized in the park will be able to go out this rear gate and go down this paved access way to the trail system or the walkway system that goes through the park. In addition, there's a bit of a drop-off here along the curbing and the entrance drive. So we are proposing a wood-style park guide rail along that area to address safety issues and keep people in the right areas. This is the lighting plan. I think I'll just defer that to David when I'm done, and he can talk a little bit about. This I don't think is I've got another one that's a little bit more updated. This was done for the Wetlands Commission to show them that there won't be any spillage of light into the wetlands. This is the planting plan, and I wanted to talk a little bit about what we've done in the center islands because, again, this addresses the use of gravel instead of paved surface. So what we've done is, if you look over the side here, there's a blow-up of the landscaping that's going to be going into the island. The goal, we tried really hard to come up with a landscaping plan that would define the island because the concern is that here's this big gravel parking lot. Is it going to turn into what's already out there, just this big open kind of a messy parking lot? So we decided that really the only practical solution to that would be to come up with a planting plan that would really define where the plants, where these islands are going to be, and would be the type of plantings that aren't going to migrate into the parking lot. Like, we didn't want to use grass because the grass is just going to kind of go into the parking lot. It's not going to be a defined edge. It's not going to look good, and it's not going to function well. So what we did was we came up with this planting scheme. This is just a blow up of one area, but there's rows of different types of plantings. So the first item we've done is we're looking at a prairie drop seed grass, if you will, that comes in clumps, and that will be put along the edge of the island so that it'll shade out the grass. It'll be clump after clump. They'll get a little bit fuller, but they won't extend into the parking lot or move around. So those will grow. They'll hopefully be there during the winter, and toward the spring, what happens is they get mowed down and they come up again. So there'll be a very short period of time when there's not great coverage there. But to address that, there are additional plantings. So that's the outer row. The next row will be a false indigo, which is a little bit larger bush, a little bit fuller, and has a little bit of color on it. And that will help to define the island. What we're trying to go for is kind of a rounded, as we go toward the middle, it gets higher, and it's definitely going to be a screening and really kind of be a showplace for aesthetically and address this issue of gravel. In the center of the island, we're proposing switchgrass, which will just kind of all grow together, provide the highest clump of greenery in the middle, and kind of fill out the rest of the island. Over for the fencing around the storage yard, if you look on your plans we gave you, it shows a chain link fence, and we will be updating that. We're going to get the specifications for. This is the fence that has been chosen. It's a metal post for durability, and the wood stockade gets bolted to that, as you can see. And along the front over in this area, next to the building, will be the same style mounted on a gate that is adequately designed, either with a wheel on the bottom or with the structural integrity to keep that so it doesn't sag at all. So that fence will sit just behind the block retaining wall that goes around this whole storage yard. So there'll be a retaining wall, and then on top of the retaining wall from down here in the parking area, you'll see landscaping, and then behind that, the stockade fence. The intention is to stain the fence. I don't think you have a full or determined color yet at this point, but it was, the one thought was to match the maintenance building and pick out a color, that kind of earth tone that blends in with the rest of the park. So the stormwater calculations, provided them to the commission. You received the executive summary. Just wanted you to know that there's a full set of calculations that include hydrographs and all of the other information and resource information that we utilize to calculate the runoff. Essentially, what's happening here is the existing parking area, as I said, is gravel, and it's just one big area of gravel. The SCS method in calculating storm runoff uses a TR55, which is looks at runoff conditions and establishes runoff curve numbers that are used. And went through and calculated the runoff curve number, and essentially, a gravel parking lot that's been beat down over the years and driven on and really compacted performs pretty much like impervious asphalt. It's a little different, but the runoff is substantial, and so therefore, when we went through the drainage calculations and we looked at the difference between the existing peak discharge and the proposed peak discharge, what we found was that because we were adding some large green center island areas and redefining the parking area, we found that there really was no increase in runoff. It actually came out as a slight decrease. And so we didn't go any further with calculating the attenuation capabilities of the stormwater quality basin, but in reality, there's going to be even more, there'll actually be detention out there because that basin has to fill up with water before it starts spilling over. We did not go forward and calculate that. At that point, we felt that we addressed the requirements of the commission. The stormwater quality basin was designed to handle what's called the water quality volume, and the state of Connecticut puts out a stormwater quality manual, which makes basically, it's a calculation that is in the report that was submitted that shows that it essentially is the first inch of runoff off of all the impervious areas. So what we did is we went ahead and designed the water quality volume and the stormwater train to address a paved parking lot. So in the future, if it's ever decided to pave it, it's already there. There'll probably at that point be an increase in runoff, and we had to run through some numbers to show that the basin can handle attenuation, but I feel pretty comfortable that it can. Sightline issues, I've already gone over that, and we've increased and corrected that sightline issue. Earthwork, the project calls for 2,967, at least that's what the number comes out to, about 2,900 cubic yards of cut and 2,700 cubic yards of fill. So the goal was to kind of fill toward the west side of the parking lot and fill in this area over here, and up in here there's a cut, and over here there's a fill. We're hoping that it really comes down to very few, if any, vehicles that have to move material. Probably want to utilize the material right on within the park. Wetlands, this went through the Wetlands Commission, application 2017-01. That commission approved the parking lot. Matter of fact, they did not have any conditions of the approval for the parking lot. They did have a few conditions for the other portion where the ball fields are going to go. They wanted, and I've provided a copy of their decision letter dated April 13th, 2017. They're requesting that you guys look at putting some bollards on the entrance drives into the two ball fields just to keep traffic out of it as opposed to just allowing maintenance and emergency vehicles in. And they asked that fencing that David explained along the side of the field be installed so that there'd be a minimum of 6 inches along the bottom for any wildlife to get underneath and not have to go around. E&S control is included in the packet. We've got a full page of E&S control. We are putting in a sedimentation basin that'll be installed in the location of where where the stormwater quality basin is going to be. There'll be 2 diversion ditches, one along the westerly side and one along the northerly side. That will control runoff during the initial excavation and filling operation until we get a little further along. Then the basin will be built and the stormwater system will be connected to it. We also have on plan view, we also have siltation control called for along the edge of this slope from the disturbance of planting if needed. We're hoping to get that seeded and stabilized quick enough to not need it, but also along the edges of this area here where there is proposed filling up to that wall. Along the northerly side of this storage and maintenance area will be 3 bins made out of gravity blocks, and in those bins will be some of the recycled material that they use on the park. The thought is that it will be used internally, but at some point it may be made available to the public if there's excess. So we put it in the public side of the whole facility, and that way it's for 2 reasons. One is to allow for the public to gain access to it if that's the way that it goes. And the other reason is being material in large piles, larger trucks have to bring that material in, and the larger trucks can maneuver in this parking lot where they can't maneuver well in this storage yard. I mean, they can bring small pickup trucks and small trailers into this to unload mowers and things like that, but any large trucks with material will be dumping in the proposed parking lot. And that is basically what I had prepared for you. I don't know if you want to start with questions with me, and then we could work back to the other portion.
Yeah, why don't we just start with questions in general? Start down at the end.
I'm actually good. You guys, well thought out. Sounds great.
I just had a quick question. Will, in Will's comments under site plans, which is second 1A, the handicapped accessible parking spaces proposed to be added in the main paved area do not appear to comply with the Americans with Disabilities Act standards. Has that been fixed or addressed at any point?
The issue is that ADA requirements are that an accessible space and the path to an accessible space not exceed 2% slope in any direction. Right now, the existing parking lot, the main paved parking lot, exceeds that somewhat. The intention, the Parks and Recreation Department is planning to repave, essentially reconstruct that parking lot, and as part of that process, they will accomplish the grading that's necessary to make the spaces fully ADA compliant, because it really can't be achieved without some significant reconstruction of the parking lot to shift the grades enough. So that is a very near-term project for the department that will be tied in with all of this other work, so that essentially as the need arises for the additional parking, the need arises for the overflow parking lot, that goal of accomplishing the ADA accessibility will be met concurrently.
I'm going to interject here. Does this project require additional handicap parking? Is that why those spaces are being?
The handicap parking is keyed into the total number of spaces that are provided.
Okay, so
It's not specific. Right now, there is an excess of parking relative to the uses that are available in the vicinity of this entrance to the park. There is a parking summary that's been provided.
well, I understand that. Let me just answer my question. Is the town required at this time to add additional handicap parking?
It is not on the basis of the total quantity of parking that is
Then
there.
why are you proposing to add handicap parking?
Because the parking, the total parking that will be available when the overflow lot is rebuilt will be more. You get
So then
over-
part of this project does require additional handicap parking.
Yes,
Then that has to be compliant.
and it will be compliant as the project is being done. Part of what will be done will be
It
satisfying
must
that
be
requirement.
compliant before a CO is issued on this project.
Understood.
Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I can tell you that the,
Mr. Cooper,
Oh, I'm sorry.
microphone, please.
I can say that the regrading project for the current paved parking lot has been approved. And it is, the funding is there for it. So, it's not as though, we are waiting, for additional funding for that to occur. It's part of the town's LoSiP project. It's been on the drawing boards ever since I came in, because when you drive through that paved parking lot, you gotta check your molars half the time when you drive through there. So we are in the process.
I don't want it to come as a surprise when this project is getting wrapped up and you still don't have compliant ADA parking, it is going to affect the CO on this project. I want that out in the open now. Okay. Go ahead.
My other question was, Scott, you were talking about light fixtures in the parking lot. And again, in Will's comments, in Part B, the proposed light fixture lacks park in residential neighborhood character. Do we have any samples for that would be compliant with that?
The fixture that had been selected for the overflow parking lot was to be an LED, dark sky compliant, energy efficient fixture. The fixture that we were looking at is the one shown in the center here, this Lithonia D-series fixture. It was selected to be consistent with the fixtures that are present in the park right now. Historically, the park fixtures have been shoebox fixtures on the poles in the main parking lot. Those have recently been replaced with more efficient fixtures. We're trying to keep consistent with the park's own sort of image and history in terms of what's present there. And at the same time provide for better quality of lighting, more efficient lighting, and dark sky compliant, full cutoff lighting.
Thank you. I don't have any further questions.
Okay, I have a bunch of questions. One, I have no idea what to say, but just to follow up on the ADA. Is there any requirement that says ADA parking has to be this close or is allowed to be this far from a particular use point? Do you know what I'm getting,
Yes.
Okay.
In general, ADA parking is intended to be placed as close as practical to the associated use. In this case, the majority of the existing ADA parking at the park is at this side, not talking about the pond, the lake side, but is
See it, right,
yeah,
it would be right here.
yeah, it's on the uphill end of
You're looking at the pool
Yes, I
facility
see.
there, looking
Yeah.
south.
Okay,
you've
so
actually.
those will be the nearest spaces to the new fields? Those ADA spaces that you just pointed out?
Yes, this is actually a sketch showing, this is the location of the existing ADA parking. There are a few spaces here, there are a few spaces here. There are a couple here also that are adjacent to existing picnic structures.
Okay.
So they're distributed through the parking lot to be adjacent to the pool building, the basketball court, the playground. They're adjacent to paved pathways that people can follow into the park.
Okay. And so it just seems to me that it's a long hike to those new fields. But before I ask about that, so the existing overflow lot, which because it is not clearly delineated where cars can park, what's your guess on how many cars park there now? Or could max out at?
It was in the vicinity of 230.
So 230 in the existing overflow lot?
Yeah, we tried to make an approximate count because it isn't striped.
I know. it's tough.
And, you know, we sort of ballparked it, actually, well, the new parking lot is rated at 169.
Okay.
I think we were a little higher than that, so somewhere in the vicinity of 180 or 190 spaces. If you put people in there
Properly,
densely,
yeah.
properly but densely, not.
So we're losing some spaces with the addition of the islands and that kind of stuff.
Probably a few,
Yeah.
but given that it's not a striped parking lot, whether or not you could ever actually achieve what we can count by measuring is kind of doubtful. It's informal lot, so it's never going to be as efficient.
So that brings up my very next question. So it's an informal lot. It can't be striped, I guess, because it's gravel. Do you intend to put like, I don't know about a 2x4, but, you know, something indicating here's a place to park, space. Here's a place to park, space. Here's a place to park,
Yeah, and again, the reason that we're going to great extent to do that landscaping and to really fill out the entire island is so that the island itself will kind of set up the traffic pattern.
But it won't necessarily define how
It
close
doesn't-
one car has to be to the next.
No, it's a gravel lot, and so they come in and they're pretty much just gauging by the car next to them. If a car parks in the middle, then they kind of fill in the spots. It can be line striped, like a ball field can be line striped, either paint or lime temporarily, but it's, I would doubt.
I wasn't necessarily asking for that, I just wanted to understand what your plan was. The islands, are they raised, or are they low? Are they gonna have
islands are
a
gonna be-
curbing or of some sort around them, like railroad ties or something?
No, again, that's all material that isn't gonna perform well. So the island is going to be lower than the parking lot. The water's gonna sheet flow into the island. In the center of the island is gonna be about a foot lower than the end. So it's 15 feet wide, up to a foot deep in the middle.
Okay. And as far as the maintenance area, I believe there currently are lawnmowers and things like that in maybe even ball striping, field striping machinery, housed underneath the pool concession. Are they gonna be removed from there and everything moved over to the new maintenance shed?
That's still going to be utilized for storage, but what we're trying to put inside there is a much larger equipment that's
Okay.
currently inside the parking lot, you know, that.
That's fine, I just wanna make sure I have a clearer picture. I still am concerned about the parking issue and access parking to the new fields. When you go to the senior center, you know people park in the senior center for ball games, football games, baseball games. It restricts the use of the people who go to the senior center on where they can park. This, I think, will just exacerbate that. And I just, you know, I don't know how to address that, but those fields are really far away from the overflow lot. They're not as far from the main parking lot, but if the goal is to make sure we have adequate parking, accessible parking, I'm not 100% sure that the overflow corrections and improvements will do that.
Well, I think if you measured it out, it really isn't that much farther away, not that it's a great thing, it really isn't that much farther away than the current football field and fields number 2 and 3, than from the overflow parking lot. Once the west field is done, it really is not gonna be, you know, that much farther away, realistically. As far as the senior center is concerned, I guess, was it a year ago, 2 years ago, I think there was some sort of restriction on that. The overwhelming majority of the time, that when the seniors are there, we're not gonna be having the type of use in the park than we would after the seniors are gone, which is generally 3:30, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I really don't see that being a significant impact or an inconvenience on the seniors at this point.
I would point out a couple of things. One is that there was a lot of discussion when we were here before about the construction access to the west field, because one of the options that was considered was down off of Parkview. And down a hill, you have to walk a couple of hundred yards to get to the field. This will be the one really distinct way to get there, aside from this, from a path that's going to be paved continuously from the parking lot. There isn't a good way to get there. This is all wooded in here. It can be quite wet in season. It's not amenable to somebody walking through here.
And I
If
think I
somebody's
did
gonna-
read that there will no longer be construction access from Parkview.
Correct.
Oh,
So we aren't setting up the idea that this is a way to get to that field. That's not gonna be sort of demonstrated through the construction process. So hopefully it won't be a learned habit, but really realistically, if somebody wanted to walk here from somewhere other than
The main
the
path.
main parking lot, they'd be doing it down Parkview and in that way.
Okay. And then just, I think one last question. So as far as the stormwater basin treatment, you mentioned it would be monitored, and if necessary, you'd adjust the gate valve. Who does that? Who determines?
Well, the engineering, the department would do that. In other words, it's not anticipated that that is gonna hold water. It's mostly a fill section, so we didn't have to worry about groundwater. And the thought is that after it rains, it's gonna filter out through the ground. And so the gate valve is just something that has come up through my discussions with some of the other engineers. And, I'd actually like to use some of this proposal and development in future dealings with developers to show them that there are other things that can be done for low-impact development, things that can be done to control the water quality basins a little better than has been done or that's being done in recent years. And so it's not an expensive thing to put a gate valve on the end of it. So we put it on, we close it, and if we notice there's water staying in the basin, we open it a little bit.
Okay, I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Okay, I just have a couple questions. On existing driveway, you gonna gate that to close it off, or that's gonna be open?
Yeah, the existing driveway has the gate that I showed you in the photo.
Okay.
So
He said
that,
staff access only.
Yeah,
that'll
that's
be a
fine.
stockade gate with the metal.
So that'll be closed then?
It'll be closed off.
And
It's not at the street.
It's not the street, it's even with the
it's
side
probably
of the
all the way
building.
in, right?
Yeah.
So the gate is going to be, right, the building it's light, it's in light lines there, but about where the arrow is will be where the gate goes in.
Okay, you gonna use any signage over there to tell them this is just for town staff only, or any of that?
Yeah, that's a good point. I did not do anything in terms of that, but that would have to be done,
And
yes.
one of the important areas over there, that's one of the reasons why we recessed that gate, because we do have the picnics that go on
Right.
there. And many times, the folks that are having picnics would like to drive in, and there's a little path right next to the
No, I
building.
I just try and prevent people from trying to get in there to get into this.
Well, we left it open so people can use it a little bit,
Right.
to unload things.
Okay.
and what have you.
The other question, on the islands, do you have any guardrails around these, or anything like that?
No, there's no guide rails, there's no curbing. They
No, I
are,
understand why you don't have the curbing, but I'm saying, what's gonna prevent the plants from getting damaged here from people driving into them?
well,
Trees. There's trees in the island,
In the center of them, right?
yeah. It's a typical, I mean, there may be some potential damage for the first foot and a half or so.
That's
Yeah.
why the bushes that were picked, the grass is low enough so that the car can kind of overhang it if it does, but just the bulk of landscaping is something that's gonna stop people from, okay, I gotta stop them hitting the bush in front of me.
And they're
No,
not,
I-
gonna-
no,
they're
I
not gonna be on
understand.
the very edge either. I mean, we have 15 feet that we're spreading these out
Okay.
on.
Well, that was my only
I
concern.
might add that, Will, in talking about the team here, Will is certainly on the team. We got together with Will, and Will helped out with the landscaping. And also, we met with Russ, who is the superintendent that maintains the park, and I'm forgetting the.
Renee Marshall, Master Garden.
So we had a couple of quite lengthy meetings to go over what kind of plantings we could put there that would actually function in that way, that would keep cars where they're supposed to be.
And even if you had a curb, the curb isn't gonna stop the overhang of the car. So the island has to be planted in such
No, I
a
was
way.
just like,
Yeah,
the
that's
plantings you could put in there, that,
Right.
how well they survive when people driving into them all the time. That's what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
you'd have to constantly maintain them.
And, well, the hope is that the plantings have enough of their own mature height between the layers and that the spread, that they kind of become an entity in themselves, which kind of creates the barrier that you're talking about.
No.
As opposed to just grass and a few,
That was my
flowers.
only concern. It's the gate and signage. I mean, I'm pretty good.
I think you guys have done a great job of addressing a lot of the concerns that were raised last time. The only question I can add is regarding the bollard you guys had mentioned, that goes towards the field, that's still gonna allow emergency vehicles or anything that needs to get up there?
Yeah, what the Wetlands is suggesting, and I really didn't discuss it with you, and again, it's a recommendation from the Wetlands Commission. They're talking about a removable bollard. It would just come right out. They have them, you see them on the linear trails, if you're familiar with them.
Yeah.
Some of them are lockable, you can lock it, and others are just, they're, if it's in the park, it probably doesn't have to be lockable. It's just, it sits on a little key that's in the pavement, and you could just slide it right out.
But who would be going there other than the park maintenance?
That's their concern, I don't know.
Ambulance?
Well, no,
No,
but that's what you want
That's
to go.
allowed.
Yeah.
Who don't you want would be going there, because it's way off on the trail, it's not in the parking
I
lot.
think they're concerned about,
Well, you have to drive onto those paths off the parking lot, which is kind of weird.
The team mom who has a car full of.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
You know.
where you have to say, whoa, where are you going?
There will be
I got
cars
four-wheel
down there
drive.
if you don't put bollards in.
okay. I mean, you have to go through quite a bit of area that you shouldn't be in.
You gotta drive a long way to get to that point. But
What do you mean?
You don't think they would be there?
Oh, they would.
We have seen it.
Yeah, where there's pavement, they'll try
They
to.
will drive. We have seen it.
Without a doubt.
Okay, so it'll be something that allows emergency, that's my only question, thank you.
I had a question about the gate valve, but you answered that. I have some questions regarding the fields. On the practice field, I noticed you have a lot of landscaping proposed. I'm just curious, and on the larger field, on the actual field, there's hardly any. What's the purpose of all the landscaping along the practice field? Just curious.
Oops, got the same one.
I think the reason that the practice field was more extensively planted, for one thing, the screening, the explicit screening on both ends to keep balls from flying, particularly in the direction of the adjacent playscape. Also, it's a more publicly visible area. It's also directly upgrade of a wetland. So part of the purpose of the vegetation is to allow for a little bit more filtering, a little bit more protection of the wetland habitat that's adjacent. It's also, with regard to the west field, it's essentially a hayfield now. And what we're hoping to do is the uphill side of the field is going to remain lawn. It's going to be a gentle enough slope that people can sit on it and watch games and things. We're trying to create a situation that's not too much maintenance.
It's really framed pretty well by woods
Yeah,
right now. There's a big difference between the environment.
The Westfield.
Yeah.
yeah. If you didn't know it was there, you'd have to go looking to figure out that it was there. It is pretty well screened from the park otherwise.
And the access path to the Westfield, that comes off of the existing path that's there that leads to the lake? Is that what?
There's an existing paved pathway that comes down past the picnic pavilion and the basketball court to this little loop. There's the playscape is right here, and then yes, this path I believe does connect over to the lake. So we're branching off of that loop with a new path that's going to go out to the Westfield.
You're branching off where the playscape is.
Right, just north of the playscape, and sort of skirting along the edge of the woods that are there right now, and then in through the woods to the Westfield. The path was chosen as the location that was, the existing grades were most amenable to putting in a path. We did look at other options, whether it was coming across roughly here south of the tennis courts and south of the practice fields. This was really probably the most practical in terms of what the existing conditions are and keeping the disturbance to a minimum.
Yeah, being such a distance from the parking areas, is there ever any proposed option of adding access drive or from the adjacent roadways? You mentioned something about the park lane or park view,
Parkview.
or
From the lake?
to the
From the
west
lake,
field.
you'd have to have a bridge.
From the lake what?
I think there's a bridge.
Oh,
There's a concept for the overall development of the park that was done years ago when David was referring to when his firm did the original park. And I don't think that's been updated since, but there has been discussion and some sketches made showing other parking areas. Matter of fact, one of the parking areas was in the neighborhood of over near Parkview and this field. But the thought was not to go to that extent at this point in time. That was, possibly a future overall planning done, and if the park ever grows even further someday, but I don't think you don't want to go there. I mean,
We really don't, and the POCD does call for an upgrade to the town's master plan. There is a master plan, and as I referred to it, a lot of I don't think any of you have probably ever seen it. But there is a plan that was developed in
70-ish.
it's been a while. And one of the
78, I'd say.
Well, and one of the schematics did show, near the pond, it did show access, where what we call the junior soccer field over there. They were talking about the possibility of converting that into a parking lot at some point. But the challenge there is getting cars in and out of there, but it has been thought about. What makes more sense to try to get more people, parking closer to the actual facilities that they're going to be using. So,
In the event that we ever do need additional fields, and there's already a hayfield, equivalent of a hayfield there now, Does that mean next to that hayfield, it's flat enough that you could put a second field, or is there, I mean, I don't know what the terrain is like back there. I mean, if it's flat enough for one hayfield, is it flat enough for two hayfields?
It isn't particularly flat right
It is
now.
not.
We are having to do a fairly significant amount of grading. You know,
Look at the
yeah, I mean,
contours
you
on
can
it.
see from the contours, the area of the field itself probably drops about 30 feet from one edge to the other.
Mhm.
It's a hillside, so we are cutting about 12 feet on the uphill side, filling about 14, 15 feet on the downhill side in order to pull this off.
Maybe the original farmer had goats.
Well, tractors can drive on hillsides, that's no problem for them, it's just, it's not amenable to a soccer game particularly.
And if you looked at putting in a parking lot inside the park over near there, it really changes everything, because it brings vehicles into the park. And you get into all kinds of other problems, safety issues and how to keep them separated. And so, at least at this point in time, it didn't want to go in that, even go in that direction because of the drastic change that it would.
Yeah, the intent of this particular change to the park was really to take advantage of opportunities that minimized invasive reconstruction of the park. We're trying, you know, we're not, the amount of tree clearing is very, very minimal. We don't have to go and clear the area of a football field to build a football field, which is a pretty rare opportunity. So we're trying to take advantage of that kind of thing so that the overall impact on the environment is kept to a minimum, and yet you're getting the maximum practical usage out of the land and out of the park facilities. And you know, just to summarize the parking, the total parking that's going to be provided is going to be 310 parking spaces between the overflow and the principal lot. That's more than is required to support the swimming pool, the basketball court, all of the existing fields that are adjacent to this, the new fields that we're proposing to put in, as well as to provide general multi-purpose park use. There's sort of a catch-all category called multi-use park, which covers things like the walking trails, the picnic facilities, the playground and things. We're accounting, that alone, we're allowing for 100 potential parking spaces. That's a pretty significant amount of parking, and to have all of those things maxed out simultaneously, you know, we talk as though the overflow field is for the west field, but really, the parking is the parking, and people are going to fill it up as it's available until they need to use the overflow parking. It's not that we're
Are parking
requiring.
stickers not required in the overflow lot?
They're not required.
Still not.
That's correct.
Okay, I just want to run through Will's notes quickly. First, you're requesting a survey waiver.
Yes, the property line is north of the parking. So let me grab it up here.
How's the commission feel on that? Any issues with waiving the A2 requirement?
No,
Okay.
no.
That's fine. We already talked about the handicap parking. Portable toilets should be set on concrete pads. I believe right now you have them set on a bituminous pad.
Yes.
I personally don't have an issue with that. Does
Me either.
anyone think we should require concrete for that?
No, I don't have an issue with
Okay. The block retaining walls, that's just around the maintenance area?
The modular block is around the back of the maintenance area.
That's the only place where you have gravity block retaining walls?
The gravity block I'm referring to is the concrete.
The Mafia
Yeah.
block.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it'll be completely hidden. You won't-
What's across the side, the north side and the west
The
side?
northwest and a little bit of the south is all modular blocks, so this typical keystone,
There should
similar
be a
to the
detail-
block wall that's already in the park
But
next
there
to
should
the.
be a detail on the plan for that.
There is a detail,
There is?
yeah.
I wanted the detail of, not, it's just a general detail. I wanna know more about the shape of the stone, the
Yeah, you
color.
just have a schematic detail, you know, we need a block specified.
Yeah, I could provide that. I was going to go with the same block that we used in the park when we did the retaining wall next
The
to the
pool?
pool facility. So we're gonna use the same thing.
All right, so we'll-
But I'll provide that and put it on
But we'll, so then it's going to be the same block that's used around the pool,
not around the pool, it's,
or around the pool area,
yeah,
okay.
yep.
Detail for the fence enclosure and the gate, identify the color and finish. So you have the photographs there,
Right,
we should get something on the plan to,
to do the color and the finish, okay.
concrete pads, under the containers in the maintenance area. You show 2 pads in the maintenance area, but they're not called out in any way. What are they?
There are 2 storage bins that.
Right. What is the construction of these rectangles that are drawn on the plan?
I could add that detail as well. They're just gonna be concrete pads,
Okay, so you're gonna have concrete pads.
yes. Otherwise, they get damaged.
The note on D1, the big bold note saying that you have a plan, but we're gonna build it the way we want. That's gotta go away. You got a plan, you're gonna build it according to the plan.
Okay, I'm not even familiar with that. It's not, I'm not recalling that.
Well, I'll read it to you. It says,
I was afraid you'd do that.
although these standards and notations have been included in this submission, they are intended to be utilized as a reference guide, noting that the proposed work will be coordinated and completed to the town and/or its representative, contractor.
Yeah, I could tweak the end of that.
No, get rid of it. You got a set of plans.
Yeah,
That's all you
I'll tell
need.
you what we were shooting for with that note. Basically, we're trying to say that, and I will reword it, we're trying to say that those aren't construction plans. In other words, they're not plans that are gonna be used for bidding or construction. They're plans that are being used for procuring a permit. And it wasn't worded that way, so I'll reword it so that's a little more clear.
I don't think you need a note. You have a set of plans.
Well, that's a kind of protect your butt kind of thing in terms of certification on a plan, because what happens is sometimes you prepare a plan for permit procurement and people think that it's a construction plan. It's not a
Can't
construction.
you just say that? These are permanent plans, not construction.
That's what I'm saying.
That's it.
I'll
Those
word it
four
so I
words.
can support.
Those 4
But
words.
eventually it has to be for construction.
Property line along the street frontage should be added to sheet SL1.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Property line along the street frontage should be added to sheet SL1.
Oh, the
lighting.
photometric.
Your lighting plan, you don't show the property line, or the street line. The light fixtures, anybody have a problem with their proposing?
No, it's fine.
Okay. The height of the base above the ground, you're proposing 2 feet. Will is saying possibly cut it down to 6 inches,
Oh, you're talking about for the light?
the light pole base.
The other issue I raised is because, you know, these being in the residential district, we have a shorter light pole. So when you put them on these huge pedestals, they really look funny.
Yeah, but my personal experience is that in a parking lot, light poles get hit. And,
But they're in a 15-foot island.
As long as, you know, you'll note that the light poles in the existing main parking lot all have 4 bollards around them.
Yeah, but they're not surrounded by a landscape island.
Right, in this case with a 15-foot island, we
We
could
could make,
lengthen the pole, shorten the base. I think, you know, we commonly in public lots,
I personally don't have a problem with the 2-foot base. I'm looking for your detail. I think you're calling for a rough concrete base.
yeah, it's on the SL1 drawing in the parking lot set.
Yeah, you have a purged finish on it. what do the rest of the commission feel?
No issue with it. Kind of issue with it the way it is.
24 inch?
Yeah, no issue with that.
You know, it's surrounded by plantings.
Exactly.
I don't think you need the base if, you have, again, you have 15-foot island. Shouldn't be driving it. That's it.
I don't have a- not
I
telling you
don't have
what
a
to
problem,
do.
if they were out in the open,
Oh, the lighting on this campus is practically on the ground and no one drives into any of the lights.
What's that?
The lighting in this campus has practically no bases on them at all. They're almost on the ground.
What's the rest of the commission feel?
No issue.
No issue.
With what? It's drawn at 24, you don't have an issue with that, or you don't have an issue with Will's comment saying that they should be lower?
24 is fine.
What they proposed is, no,
Looks like 24 has it, with a parge finish like you're calling out. There was just a question about why no lights in the maintenance area.
Yeah, Frank, maybe you
Yeah,
could.
one of the things that we were looking at is that currently there's a vehicle and light right there that we don't like. So one of the things that we were considering is the fact that, you know, given the fact that it has a barn effect, that we were looking for a gooseneck, you know, barn light that would illuminate
Is that fine?
the,
Can you show that?
that would illuminate
That's on yours, right?
the maintenance area. The only time that's gonna be illuminated would be for security purposes at night. I mean, we're not gonna be working in there at night, so it'd be more of a security thing more than anything else.
Show the maintenance
No, it's-
building in comparison to the yard.
It would be on that,
So right there at the entrance, Frank? Right behind the gate?
yeah, it would come off the side of the building.
Right
Yeah.
here?
Yeah, it would come off the side of the building and illuminate the area where,
So you're talking about one of those,
yeah, barn light,
yeah,
you know, and then it would just illuminate the area where the gentleman, where my guys walk in, and, again, it's more
so
security.
you have no intention of doing work there at
Oh,
night
not at
where you
night,
need illumination?
No, it's more of a security lights.
Less light is better, I guess. We already talked about having removable bollards on the 12-foot wide roadway going down to the field. Several places on the plan, where there are the walking areas across the grass, you say if needed, we put screenings. Could you just describe what screenings are?
Yes, it's a common approach to doing a walking path. It's sort of
I just need you to define what screenings are.
it's finely crushed stone,
Okay.
so that it compacts well. It's a good wearing surface. It's, you know, typically to be the gray trap rock, stone dust approach. I think the idea was.
That's all I needed, thank you. The sleeves you're putting in where the wetland crossing is, do you think there's ever any intention that you'll have year-round potable water going down to that field? Like, if you're gonna put sleeves in, should you put them deeper now, or do you think that's not something that you'll ever need?
Well, anything that's gonna go in there is gonna be seasoned at best, so we would blow it out.
All
So
right.
that you wouldn't have the problem of the pipes cracking or anything like that.
Okay.
The thinking there is that, you know, we would, you know, at some point, God willing, you know, we need electricity through there, or we need water there for, primarily for irrigation is our initial. So that would be blown.
Just throwing it out,
I hear you.
put 3 pipes, because if you're gonna run electricity, and say you wanna put well, everybody has cell phones, but if you wanna run any kind of low voltage electric down there,
Run it now.
and then have a water conduit, run 3 just so you have them. That's just a recommendation, personal recommendation. My only other question is concerning the plantings. The grasses, I think they're fine, I have no problem with them, but you're calling out for your plant size a plug. So how long is it gonna take for the pictures that you showed of that grass? How long is it gonna take to have that from a plug?
We've been utilizing plugs, even at the town hall, at the library, and even at the senior center. And we've had great success with him, as opposed to buying plants and putting them in. And if you look around the town hall, it's been taking us about 2 growing seasons for them to get to the point where they are substantial. So that's our thinking.
Okay, now, I was just curious, because I don't think anyone is envisioning,
They're about this tall as a club.
they're gonna have this, where that stand of grass is, this is what you're gonna have the first year.
And remember, there's a lot of plantings.
There's a lot of plants.
Yeah.
There's a lot of plants.
But you think in a couple of years they fill
Yeah,
out?
a couple
In,
of rows.
that's in that island.
In the islands, yeah,
So potentially you're gonna have people driving over.
or walking over them or stepping over them, yeah. So there's, I mean, that's something that might take some maintenance and replanting in certain areas.
You know, if you have a season like last year where it didn't rain very often, unlike this year, yeah, we may have to replant.
Well, they could also, in the first few years,
Rope it off. or
you
something.
can rope it off with a very minimally, visually, but enough to keep them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then one of the other commissioners asked the question, I'll ask it again, do you have any intention to try to delineate the parking?
Striping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, is there,
Well, it can be done, 9 by 18, I mean, you know, that
But,
can be done. but
Frank,
that
when you
can't.
have bigger events and you know people coming, don't you have people in the parking lot directing traffic?
The biggest event we have at the park is without a doubt, is the Sprint from Monroe, you know, and even with people crash parking in there sometimes, and you know, it's orderly. I don't anticipate it's gonna be a problem.
Now, my concern is, you know, volume, you know, we're trying to maximize parking spaces, and if people are leaving 6 feet between their cars when they pull in,
Yeah, like I said, you know, the biggest event we have at the park is a Sprint from Monroe, and I don't anticipate, you know, anything being much larger than that, and it works.
okay. I don't have an issue, it's just a question. Will, do you have anything? I normally ask you if you have anything.
I can run up there.
Anybody else have anything that popped into their head? Nope. Okay. Anything else from the applicant?
Sir.
No. What do we want to do with this?
I think we close the hearing with all the public.
We made some notes about some things that need to be added to the
Yeah.
plan. I don't think that we need any further submittals on that, they just need to be added to the plan, so. We're closed. Thank you. Mr. Cooper, should have asked you this before I closed, but if this project is approved and everything, what's your tentative schedule?
Well, given the fact that we don't have irrigation out there right now, it would probably take a couple of growing seasons. So if we were able to start it, say, this fall, and get some grass planted on the fields, this is 2017, you know, at best, we might be able to use it in the spring of 2019.
And what about the parking lot?
The paved parking lot?
The overflow lot?
Well, the thinking there is that we anticipate, you know, using in-house forces in order to accomplish much of that. Public Works clearly has the ability to do a lot of grading there, has those machines and what have you. We have the workforce and the skill to do a lot of the other stuff. The planting, not a problem, and that's right up that's in our wheelhouse. The challenge for us is gonna be building, you know, getting the gravity blocks in, that's something we can't do. That's gonna require, you know, some significant,
Are you looking to start pretty quick?
Ah,
Are you looking to start pretty quick?
well, hope to start, you know, we have to go out to bid, and get some bid documents moving and see what has to happen. I'd like to get the parking lot started sooner than later, you know, as a goodwill effort, you know, given that, you know, it's one of the challenges that we're facing right from the get-go. So if we can start moving on that and start getting.
Do you anticipate starting work on that this calendar year?
All things being equal, yeah, we should be able to start
That's
doing
just
something,
informative.
you know, start doing some grading and what have you. We'd like to, you know, one of the, you know, doing some tree clearing to get
ourselves out into the Westfield. Again, that's something that we feel we can do in-house. And we anticipate being able to save a lot of money. We have the manpower, we have the knowledge. Going out all the time for specialized, for contractors, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. When we can do it ourselves. And that's the approach I've been taking ever since I've been here. Having our people do the work that I know we can do, and saves us money.
Good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Bear with me 1 second, folks. All right, site plan development, we have none.
That lasted a while.
Extensions, none. Bond releases or reductions, none. Meeting minutes.
Just want to note that in the meeting minutes, Commissioner Ambrosi is listed as both present and absent. He was in fact absent, and Jonathan was seated at that meeting.
Which one is the option over here?
I wasn't here.
Can't make
I
up
was
your
away.
mind.
I couldn't make up my mind. They put me in those spots.
Okay,
Really should, they always come back early.
do we have a motion?
Motion to approve minutes for June 8th, 2017.
I'll second.
Okay, any comments? Other than scratch Commissioner Ambrosi from the present list?
Done. Okay.
Any comments?
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay, we have, how are we gonna do this? I don't have to seat somebody for this, do I?
You could keep the 5 and, Michael's not here. So you can keep the 4 and Leon could abstain and you get 3. If you get 3 votes, you're good. Otherwise, you could seat Jonathan.
No, I'm not gonna seat somebody for this. All right, so it's Porter, Townsend, Ambrosi, and Lisi.
Not Ambrosi.
Yes,
I'm
I'm
gonna
gonna
abstain.
abstain.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
All right, so call the roll, starting with Leon.
Ambrosi abstained.
Townsend, yes.
Porter, yes.
Lisa, yes.
Okay. Next up, application deliberations determinations. First one we have is SUB 2017-02, file 1262C, 716 two-lot subdivision on the corner of Wheeler Road and Hammertown. And we have Porter, Townsend, O'Reilly absent, Lisi, Kelly. How do you pronounce that again?
Formicella.
Formicella? Sorry.
Well, the town,
I believe I was present, did they say?
What's that?
I believe I was present.
You're on your list. You don't think you were here?
I don't think so.
This is last meeting.
Yeah,
Last
this was the last one. There was just the guy that was representing what was approved previously.
Oh, the one that was.
Yeah,
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 we
yeah.
had previously approved subdivision, we ran out of time.
Okay, that's why I wasn't here previously.
But you were here.
Yeah.
You were for the one that
Yes,
mattered.
yes, okay.
All right, so this was a previously approved subdivision that ran out of time, and the applicant came back and reapplied for the same two-lot subdivision. Nothing was changed. All of the conditions that the town had asked for the first time around were included in the new set of drawings. So, we have a motion.
Motion to approve SUB 2017-02, file number 1262C, 716 Wheeler Road.
Do we have a second?
Is there any further discussion? Thank you.
Well, first let's get a second, and then we'll discuss it.
I'll second.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Discussion.
No, I'm just curious as to the amount of time that went by, if there's anything significant that was.
No, there was very little time, right? It was
He
only
had
a
an
few months.
issue, he had a problem with getting something from his bank.
Can't get a release on the mortgage because he is giving a portion of land to the town right away, so it's coming out of the property. So he had to get a release from the mortgage. He couldn't get that in time.
And it was approved last fall. It wasn't like it was a year or anything.
No, there's only a total of 270 days for subdivisions. You can't go beyond that.
Right, it wasn't.
Oh, okay, so it wasn't like 2 years ago?
No, it was like last
No,
fall.
it just expired.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he just could not get things squared away with his bank in time to get it in under the deadline, so he reapplied. Any other questions? All right, we'll call the roll, starting with Jonathan.
Former Kelly, yes.
You did.
Johnson, yes.
Porter, yes.
Lisa, yes.
And O'Reilly, yeah.
O'Reilly, absent. Applications and deliberations, let's see, from tonight. What is the general consensus towards the application that we heard this evening? Let's see, who are we seating for this, Will?
Next would be Kathy.
Kathy?
Me.
Kathy.
I say go.
Hold on a second, we just,
Okay, fair.
okay. I'm sorry, go ahead, Kathy.
I say I think it's a go.
You think it's
I think
approval?
it's a go.
I think we should put together a letter of approval. We made some, well, let's just poll the commission. What do you think, Leon?
Yeah, I'm good.
Absolutely, yes.
I'm good with
I'm in agreement too. Will you,
I have a little bit, you said.
you have a
just
list
5
of all
minutes
the,
ago. Yeah, we just went through 5 minutes ago, yeah.
so all of the, we'll make them more or less conditions of approval, the things that we asked for, the changes, the notes on the plan, concrete pads, all of those items that we discussed, the applicant agreed to are going to be part of the approval.
You gotta do the signage on the driveway, right?
Yeah, there already is signage now, so they can relocate that.
Okay, that's all.
All right, so that'll be, you know, an approval draft.
Yep. Okay.
Item number 13, regulation review amendment work session. We had some discussion at our last meeting about a text amendment that we would like to put forward concerning easements. You all received an email on it, and there was a hard copy for each of you here this evening. We have a situation, I'll let you describe it. You can,
The, you know, what this regulation, what the current regulation does. The current regulation requires, in addition to the typical setbacks from the outer perimeter lines, that if there is an easement, an access easement or private right-of-way that goes through the property, for instance, let's say a common driveway shared by 2 lots, that is treated the same as the front property line, so that it has a larger setback. This is causing, in some instances, issues because it's artificially creating a larger setback in the internal part of the property. It's not really doing much from the street point of view because you're inside the property. We had a particular lot that kind of spurred this on, where the property was pretty good size. It's fronts on the is that the Houston, I guess, the river, and they have an existing dock. Dock's structure, subject to setbacks. They did a free cut on, they wanted to do a free cut on the property because it had never been subdivided before. The property has a topographic condition that was desiring an easement to be retained on one of the lots in favor of the other lot where the dock existed, because there was really no other way to get down to that dock. That necessitated this 50-foot setback, and it was impossible to do that, to keep it. And there was really no benefit to that setback from the dock, if you will. So that's one thing that kind of spurred it on. Same thing with common driveways. We had a couple years ago a property that had two existing lots. They decided to share a common driveway because it was a wetland crossing. The easement came in all the way into the property, and then it split off to the two houses, but the lots were like 1 acre lots. They weren't very big. So on the internal, there's this artificial 50-foot setback that went around that entire easement, which made it very difficult to place the houses on these small lots, 1 acre lots. So basically, we're having a 50-foot setback at the end of where the thing split off, and that was like right where the house wanted to be, the only few places where it could be. So in a few instances, this is causing some angst.
We also want to encourage, we're trying to encourage people to share a common driveway, and it kind of gets in the way because it makes their lots more restricted.
It almost treats it like a road, so.
Excuse me, Scott, you did say you are proposing people, yes, share driveways?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I heard you correctly.
But it's a disincentive if then you kind of lose all the land you can build in, so, so that's sort of the problem with doing some of those things.
So what this amendment would do, it would eliminate that setback from an easement.
Right, and that occurs in multiple districts, so it actually occurs in almost all the districts.
The setbacks would still pertain to property lines, but not to easements.
Right,
So there would be no setback,
and
From an easement.
from
correct.
the,
right?
and at the same time, we're cleaning up language. That's like using the same word throughout. Some of you'll see as you look at these, the wording is slightly different from one section, so we took the opportunity with eliminating this part to also clean up and be clear about the same verbiage. So we're getting rid of the word street line, proper, and we're trying to make it all the same in each one of the districts. So that's another, opportunity that we're cleaning up something in the code. And again, as I said, it occurs in all the different districts, the same kind of issues.
So that's the intent of this proposal, is to just clean up some bad situations in the current regulation.
Makes sense.
So, our process is, subcommittee works on this stuff, we present it to the commission, and if everyone in the commission, if there's a general consensus that yes, we want to go ahead with this, then we'll schedule for a public hearing. So that's the point where we are now, do we go ahead to the public hearing with this?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we'll schedule this for a public hearing. Thank you. Next subcommittee meeting. Let's see. Monday and Tuesday are no good for me.
I think Wednesday would be good for me.
I'm good Wednesday or Thursday. Do you have a preference, Will?
Yeah, I think Wednesday's better for me. But I could do either or, yeah.
Leanne?
I'm good with Wednesday, too. Want to do Wednesday?
All right, why don't we plan on Wednesday? I'll let Michael know. Wednesday at 5:30?
We do have, a couple of things that follow-up came in from Dominic Thomas. And, was it yesterday?
Yes.
Ray Rizio?
Yep.
And Attorney Ray Rizio was in meeting with us yesterday and has something that also he'd like to take to the committee.
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you
Yeah, why don't you?
that he has a client that's interested in, wants to introduce as a use crematorium,
Use what?
a crematorium.
That's what I thought you said.
And, but at the same time, I think they want to add chapels and other things related in a cemetery,
Within a cemetery.
within a cemetery. There is a statute that requires those type, at least the crematory, can't be any closer than 500 feet to a residential. It can be on a property that's within 500 feet, but the building can't be within 500.
Like, that's state regulation?
Yeah, that's a state regulation.
All right.
But again, it's up to you whether you allow those uses and where you allow them, how you allow them.
Do we
Yeah.
currently permit, I mean, we have cemeteries. but
We
do-
allow cemeteries, that's all we allow. We don't allow, and we allow churches. We don't allow crematories.
All right, well, you know, we'll look at it in a subcommittee.
Yeah, that's why I suggested.
I have no other correspondence. Commission reports. I have nothing new to report. Anyone else? Staff? No?
Can I just ask a question? I heard, and I don't know that this is necessarily even true, but I believe the shooting range on Route 25 across from the old Vitramon Vichy building is not in a business zone. It's, I think
Yes, it is.
it is a business zone
It's
now?
bifurcated. The front portion of the property, well, you guys approved it, and you were on the commission at the time. It's the front portion, I think it's 200 feet back is B1 or B2, and the back end is residential.
Okay, 'cause there was, people were talking about the fact that he was selling guns and that maybe that was not an acceptable use in that store.
I don't think he
He's
sells
not
guns.
selling
And
guns.
so-
Well, he's not, his,
Oh, gun
when he
dealer.
came in, his
I know he said-
application did not include
I know,
any retail sales. It was
Well,
just a
no,
shooting.
he sells
It
ammunition.
was something, I'm sorry, yes, ammunition, but
to the
no,
people who are shooting.
no
or-
Well,
firearms.
he sells to anybody, but yeah, basically you go there.
But I thought that was, I mean, I knew it was not allowed. but-
Guy across the street sells guns.
Oh, no, that's Trumbull too.
Yeah.
No, that's something else.
It's the little Walmart.
What's that?
It's the little Walmart.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I had forgotten that lot was bifurcated, but I
But it's
remember
like
that some of it
200 or
was
250
residential.
feet deep
Yeah.
where the zone change, the zone line is.
Okay,
Anything else?
no.
Motion accepted.